Are you ready for growth? Today's episode, we talk to Brian Kerlin of Optitude. Optitude works with clients to prepare for growth in their business by analyzing performance and capacity. Are you ready to perform, and do you have the capacity to get where you want to go? We really enjoyed this episode today, and we hope you do too. Thanks. Here we go.
Here we go.
Happy
Here.
Wednesday.
Yeah, happy middle of the week. I feel like Mondays and Tuesdays, the way I've organized my schedule this fall, Mondays and Tuesdays, I basically just try to like squeeze as many meetings as possible into Mondays and Tuesdays so that
Sure.
I have more concentrated work time the rest of the week. But I have to say, it makes me pretty wiped out by Wednesday morning. I'm like, okay, maybe, or the stuff kind of piles up. I'm like, maybe I need to rethink this calendar adjustment, but
Good to mess with it though, and just see how can I optimize my time to relieve myself of things for the last few days. And yeah,
yeah, exactly. It's all a grand adventure. The real trick is when I'm disciplined and paying attention to the calendar, I do a much better job and I feel much better week over week in terms of just what's on my plate and what's not, and doing a good job of giving away administrative stuff to my team and etc. When I'm being a good disciplined leader, those are the things that I'm doing. And then every once in a while, there's a week where that just doesn't go well, as I'm sure y'all can relate with. So,
but
but
that's
good to check in, good to know what's going on.
yeah, and that's I'm sure a lot of our listeners can relate to that. It's always nice when you're sort of in the groove and you're disciplined, you're locked in. And then when you get knocked out of it, it's like, oh man, like you're like trying to get back into a jet stream. Like it's not easy, but you can do it.
Yeah.
Employing all of the good tools that are out there and resetting things and also like leaning on your team. You can ask us for help to be like, hey, I'm going to prioritize this. Can you do that?
Well, and speaking of optimization, we've got a good friend on the pod today,
Hmm.
Brian Kerlin over at Optitude. Brian and I got to know each other maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago now. It's been some time, but I actually went through his program. He gave me the opportunity to go through it, and honestly, it shaped a lot of how I think about our own RevOps and the way, it changed a lot of things that we do. So I have a lot of respect for Brian and the way he thinks about working with clients. I've learned a lot from him. Our hope is, and part of bringing him on the podcast is so you can gain some of that knowledge as well. So with that, I might bring him in. Are you okay with
Let's do
that?
it. We got him in. Hi, Brian. How are you?
I'm doing well, Hannah. How are you?
We're good. We're excited to talk to you today. We just spent a couple minutes talking about you, and Dave said he got a chance to do your program.
He did, man. He was, what do we call it? He was a star student, a star participant. Like always showing up with all his work done and fully engaged. But I say that tongue in cheek. It was great. Dave, really appreciated Dave participating and gave us good feedback too on things we were trying to improve. So that was, what was that, 2 years ago or
I think,
23?
yeah, I think it was like early last year, maybe early 24.
24, Q1 24.
That's right. I think it was early 24, but I was saying to Hannah, honestly, there were a lot of things we were moving towards a more kind of structured, functional, I'll just say RevOps function for our own organization. So it was very timely for us. And I was just sharing there was a lot of things that, kind of one shaped my understanding, right? Like how I think about it, but then there were also the practical components that we started to, employ. I know you talk a lot about kind of from the inside out, and there's some components there. I'd love to just, kind of share that with the world a little bit, if you don't mind, kind of sharing the philosophy a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I can
no.
be I can be the student today because I wasn't there for it. So
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay. You put me on the spot for sure, Hannah.
exactly.
No, listen, first of all, it's great again to see you guys. Thanks for allowing me to come in and kind of join the conversation. And you guys are doing great work. We keep in touch a lot through seeing you guys on social media. We get your newsletter on Friday. So congrats to you guys for what you're doing for business owners out there in the world. But yeah, as far as, kind of reflecting back, Dave, on, when we started at Optitude, it was, gosh, I think we're over seven, like kind of closing in on the eighth year. The original premise of Optitude was to really help first-time founders, most specifically of professional service firms. So you can think of that as like expertise in delivering services, consultants, design firms, marketing agencies, architect firms, anyone that's got engineering firms has expertise as a service was really what we want to lean into. And I'll tell you the backstory on why in a second. But what we saw as part of the problem with that, with those types of firms, is those founders were, unbelievably intelligent relative to their expertise, but not normally had enough business background often to functionally build what we have specialization in is really the business development, revenue, architecture of a company. And so what tends to happen, and we tended to see this in the early days, is that the founder would get stuck doing all the business development and not able to kind of build behind them the necessary systems and structures and processes to be able to kind of evolve to the next level of growth. And so what came out of that was kind of trying to solve that problem. And we started Optitude to do that. And then we developed the framework. The Inside Up framework is a bit more about how the founder has to take a little bit of a reflective step in their business. Like, hey, great, you're the founder, you've got to this point, which is amazing to even get past the startup of your firm. But you really got to take a look in the mirror and reflect back, like, how do I keep improving the performance of our business, mostly specifically around revenue and sales and top line, and do that while I start to limit myself in capacity as the founder to start, doing other things that will help take the business to the next level. And so those are the two components, performance and capacity. They're weaved together that make it simultaneously have to do both, which is really what differentiates us as a consultant firm. A lot of times people will talk about, hey, we can generate new revenue for you, we can help you get more leads, which is obviously awesome. But what tends to be left behind is the founder kind of sitting there like, great, what do I do to remove myself from actually having to do this work all the time? And so that's how we developed a lot of our deliverables of other services from the Inside Up framework.
Yeah, honestly, I love that. I think it's so important. Honestly, Hannah and I were just shooting the breeze as we started a little bit, and I was talking about optimizing my own calendar and how, you really do try to, as the owner, founder, leader of the organization, it's so easy to get sucked into all the things or feel like you want to own all the things. And honestly, there's a reason the bottleneck's at the top of the bottle, right? Like, so we can often be the bottleneck. I'd love to hear, like, as you work with these professional, services groups, like when you think about the leader, you think about the maybe cognitive barrier, or the personal barriers that they deal with. Do you see patterns? Like, what are the kind of common, we use the term saboteurs, like what are the common ways that they sabotage themselves to get out of some of that work?
Yeah, I love the way you described it. The visual of the bottleneck, right? That's the reason it's at the top, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think foremost, consistently, the founder has to be willing to raise their hand that they, as you just described it, are either likely the bottleneck or believe that they could be the bottleneck. And that sometimes is in itself, a self-realization, like it can't be me. I'm the one that started the company. I'm the one that got it to this level. I'm the one that, worked with whatever handful of people to really put the muscle behind getting to this point, which is the way in which all companies start, unless you're outside funding backed by millions of dollars from an outside group, then you may have more resources to do it differently. But in our firm and helping customers and clients, that's normally what we see is it's self-funded to get to a certain point. However, once they get to that point, what we tend to see is they're not really sure where they're spending their time. And what I mean by that is not to like take anything away from them as a founder. It's more to be able to pause and say, listen, one of the most critical things that we all know are we're all resource constrained, time, capital, and people is the first thing is time. Where are you spending your time? And you may remember this going a little bit through the academy is we ask people to pause and think about where did you spend the last 60 days of your time in the business? More specifically, if you kind of categorize around, did you spend it in client delivery? Did you spend it in sales and marketing? Did you spend it in operations? Did you spend it maybe just in admin and meetings? And a lot of times people don't have that sort of clarity. And that's the first place we like to start is just at least doing a kind of self-assessment of where we're spending the time, which is mostly capacity driven. Then after they've got a sense of like, wow, I think I spent majority of my time in fill in the blank, right? Whatever that is. There is usually one, most constraining issue is they haven't either one, spent enough time in developing a system for business development and growth, or if they haven't felt they can give it to anybody else on the team or even an outside consultant, fractional person to help them grow their business. So they get stuck. and they get this spits and starts in the revenue and fill the lake, drain the lake type of deal where they have clients and they don't have clients, and that's not really a repeatable, predictable method for growth. So those are a few things that usually pop up.
The fill the lake, drain the lake, that's very funny. And I had certain people come to mind when you mentioned that. I think it's very, we've seen it too. We've seen it too. We've seen people who, yeah, they just get stuck. And then they're like, okay, well, so I know that this is my problem, but then like, how do I make my way out of it? Is there something that you guys typically do to get them out of the stuck, or does it look different every time? Does it have to look different because every business is different?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think it often depends on what we talk about when we meet a prospective client is it depends on where they're at in their growth journey, right? Depends on the size and shape of their company, depends on how long they've been doing it. Surprisingly enough, a lot of times people will have this belief like, must be a startup, must be an early stage company. And it's surprising that the average company, at least we work with, I don't know if you guys see this with who you work with, is between 7 and 10 years old. So they've gotten to this point of building a business that has profits and success and delivering clients and done it for a number of years. But they've gotten this, what you just described, like they've filled the lake with new clients and they deliver on that client work, and then the lake, drains, and they're like, oh gosh, now we have to go back and do it again. And while that may sustain them to a certain level of growth, it usually stagnates them for future predictable growth. And so what we like to start with is we have kind of two forms to help them kind of see the path forward. The first is it's free, it doesn't require us to get involved. It's on our website. It's called the Growth Readiness Score. And it's a simplified version of a series of questions that I'm sure you guys can also sense the value in that in the work you do is if we're in this stage of unpredictable growth and we're having stagnation, why are we having it? And so we'll ask this. I think it's 16 questions. Maybe you check me on that, but it's not a lot. It takes 5 minutes to 10 minutes to do it. And the questions are about where they're at in their growth journey, what has been their success quarter over quarter, how many ideal customers profiles, how many more specific personas are they focused on in their company, those types of questions that would get them to be like, I don't know, or if I do know, whether I'm fully sure about that answer, I'll answer the best I can. And then what happens from our internal company operations is we kick out a report to them. It's about 8 to 9 pages. And in that is basically a chance for them to look back of if they were doing it at the highest level, we call it they're in orbit, quote unquote. They don't need fuel, they don't need to rebuild the rocket. There's our little silly way of kind of thinking about growth. Then it'll describe to them what needs to be done to fix it. High level, the what, not as much the how. So number one is we think people need clarity. And to do that, that's one of the ways we help them see it. The second is when somebody does choose to work with us, they start all of our engagements with a collaborative diagnosis or the growth readiness score, whatever is the easiest form. But the collaborative diagnosis is much more comprehensive, where we go deep into the areas of growth architecture, revenue generation. How do you do it? What have you done? What are the patterns? And then what I think is probably the most valuable and maybe the best way to answer your question is a common theme when somebody's stuck is they're not sure what to prioritize next. Yeah. So I don't know how you guys feel, but when you think about revenue architecture and building a business of growth that's consistent and predictable, there's a lot there. We're talking about grow to market, we're talking about marketing, we're talking about sales. It's like it's overwhelming just to even say it. And so what we tell our clients is the best way to think about how to work on this is do you know where you're at and what to work on next? And through the collaborative diagnosis, we give them the top 3 areas that would need to be worked on, no matter if they work with us or not. So they can at least be like, okay, great. At least I know where to step next. Like, what's my next few steps forward? And to me, that's usually what unlocks people. It gets them out of I'm stagnant, I'm confused, I'm not sure, to just movement and action. And that usually takes over and they usually are good from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I have started using this term that has definitely resonated with a lot of people that I've kind of said it to is like every one of those things that you mentioned is an iceberg. And you see it, like you see the word marketing, or like maybe as a visionary and like the leader of your company, like you think, okay, great, we're gonna like do this like whole marketing initiative. What your team sees is everything under the ocean. And like having to get people on board with that, like in that you can get stuck. And
Yeah.
so, like, yeah, you have to prioritize. It's happened with every client that I've been a fractional COO for over the last like several months of like, we have all these things we need to address. Okay, which one's first? We can't do all of them at once. You will burn out and your team will cry. So,
Yeah.
which ones do we do first? Just kind of looking at, yeah, like what's going to have the biggest like impact. We actually just, I think that we did an episode a couple episodes ago about when you assess your business, like what are the questions that you ask to decide like what happens next? And one of those is which have the biggest impact.
Hmm.
Face that storm. Dave is a big fan of the buffalo and the whole buffalo metaphor that like when storm is coming, the buffalo turn and run through it rather than waiting for
Ooh,
it to come to them.
like it.
So we're all about that. Like be the buffalo, run through the storm, run at the thing that has the most impact. Because then you're going to build up this practice of facing that storm. So all of the other issues that come out from that assessment phase, you'll kind of figure out your process for addressing them. So yeah, I like the tools that you mentioned. We have taken your assessment. I think it is 16 questions.
Perfect. Whew.
Yeah.
I listen, I don't take it a lot myself, but we try to make it pared down so it's simple. So hopefully there was some value in that. Yeah,
Yep.
but I love what you're talking about. I know as you guys work with your clients, it's I think it's a similar effort in what you're trying to help them shape in their growth journey, but it may be different in what areas of the business you're helping them focus on. I think there's a whole, I don't know all of your framework exactly. Obviously, you guys are experts in it, but yeah, I think that's probably the challenge for a lot of business owners, and even is for us at Optitude. And it falls on me as the founder to keep those priorities front and center for the team and revisit them on enough regular basis to be like, hey, are we making progress? Yes, we are. And then is this still the priority relative to what's happened in the last fill in the blank, 90 days, 30 days, et cetera. So I like the way you guys think about that for sure.
Well, I loved what you mentioned about the age of the clients that you work with, because truth is we often work with a similar aged client group. Like we typically don't work with anybody who's younger than 3 years. Not that we haven't done an occasional startup,
Hmm.
but the truth is, startup, you're kind of inventing things and it's rapid testing, seeing what works. Often what we run into sounds like similar to what you run into is they're 6, 7 years in and whatever systems, because no one's ever devoid of systems, they're just messier than others, right? Like there's systems, it's just either ad hoc or super ordered.
Yeah.
But what we find is, 6, 7 years into the business, they've pushed that system about as far as it can go, right? And so, however they were operating, and they get anchored in how they're operating, got them to 5 million or 3 million or whatever the number is.
Hmm.
And now they're, you use the term stagnation, which what's a worse term you can say to a CEO of a company, right? Like, oh, we're stagnant.
Yeah.
But if you're stuck or you're stagnant at 3 million and you can't figure out how to get to the next thing, we use the term you've hit your complexity threshold, which is you've kind of pushed the level of that system about as far as it can go. And now it's so complex and there's so many moving parts and there's so many things that you're managing. The only way to get out of that is to actually flip the system, is to get into it and figure out, well, what are the mechanisms? What are the things that are no longer working and how do we cut them? And how do we augment the stuff that actually is working and or could work and build it? And so you almost have to go back into this reinvention mode at that stage. And I think a lot of what I heard you say in that is, there's the patterns that you get comfortable with. There's the ways of operating that have worked for you for so long, like me doing all the sales, as the CEO. But if I truly want to grow the business, I can't own that forever. I can't own that at 6 million or 10 million because it requires me to do something else. So there's a personal transformation coupled with a systems process transformation. It's what I really resonated with me when you first started talking about, kind of the inside up,
Yep.
is I really appreciate the indexing towards the human, right? To say like, yeah, but we're all imperfect humans leading businesses, which inherently means our businesses are imperfect, right?
Yeah, well said, man. Well said. Yeah, I think you summarized it nicely, and you and Hannah have described, at least in previous conversations, like us at Optitude, we have centered our prospect client relationship around businesses that are between roughly 1 and 10 million in revenue, and what's referred to in the business world sometimes as second stage of growth. And that's where what I think you're talking about, maybe you guys see it as in that space too, where we see it in kind of the revenue architecture, business development kind of work. starts to get unhinged in that phase, in that revenue range. 1 to 3, 1 to 5, it starts to kind of rear its ugly head. And then it's to your point that it's the founder or someone else on the executive team raising their hand like we're either one, not accomplishing our goals, or two, there's chaos, and so we're losing people, and it's we're not able to deliver great results for our clients. Those symptoms start to kind of crop up, and then they have to be willing to kind of raise their hand and kind of figure out how to help themselves get through that. And there's a number of things that need to be fixed oftentimes. But I like you guys. I am so thankful when you have a founder that's willing to kind of dig in and roll up their sleeves. They go back to like the earliest days when they founded the company. Like, listen, I'm in that next phase. I need to get my mind right about what we're going to do to try to figure out how to change this to go to the next phase. And what drives their decision making, at least in our experience, is their belief on their goals in the future. So the future dictates the present versus the past dictating the present. Whereas they don't have this. I think you even had a post on this recently. It's not linear growth, it's exponential growth. Like they have this mile marker way out there, and that's what's motivating them to want to make the change.
I'm curious. I'm looking at, so for our listeners, we are going to have a visual up on the screen, which actually kind of shows you that inside up approach that Brian has been talking about. I'm looking at the visual and looking at, yeah, we've got the early stage of growth, stage two growth, and long-term growth. And I'm curious, for business leaders who are listening, if they find themselves in the early stage, or if they find themselves in stage two, where they're somewhere between 500,000 and 10 million, or their long-term growth, they're somewhere around the 10 million mark, is the advice that you give them sort of like from a philosophical standpoint the same, like if they want to lead their business well in each of those stages, or is it fundamentally different because each one of those stages is just monetarily so different?
Yeah, it's mostly it's a good question because it's always the nuance, right? It's always in the details where you're helping people kind of and guide them through. In the actual framework, you can see strategy, systems, and practices as the core area around performance. So those are still the same regardless of what stage they're in,
Mhm.
as well as capacity. When you think about direction, discipline, and development, like you look at those core categories and realize that regardless of which stage you're in, each of those will require some sort of fundamental dig in, understand, and figure out what we need to change or evolve or do more of because it's working. So that's where I think the nuance really comes in. Not as much on what stage they're in revenue. It's the revenue piece is to get them to a sense of they're in some stage. What is it? How do they define it? We use revenue as one marker. And then as you guys probably experienced too, once you uncover, look under the hood, and you take what we call the collaborative diagnosis, really reflect, here are the priorities in the performance incapacity categories that we think you'd need to work on, right? And it's never the whole thing. Like you never really take the car apart from nuts and bolts all the way down to the framework. We have never had to do that, thank gosh. That company's probably a bit too much for us to handle as a business, to be honest. But most people just need a tweaking. Maybe they need a bit of an upgrade in their motor. I'm not even a car guy. I don't know why I'm using car metaphors, but I think people can relate to it. Like maybe they need a new, buffing and paint job because they just don't have the pieces right on the outside. Or maybe that, they've blown a gasket and we need to rework the entire revenue architecture inside the company. But I think that's maybe how we answer it is the framework's still the same. The categories within the framework are the same. The nuances of each company are a bit different.
Yeah. My focus being on like systems and process, obviously love the call out to systems and how powerful those are. But then also like discipline. We were kind of talking about this before we brought you in, that discipline is one of those things that like if you don't have it, you need someone to help you get it. It's so crucial as a leader to embody discipline for yourself, but then to also like display it for your team. And it's not easy. So my question then to you is actually of these six things. So in underperformance, strategies, systems, practices, capacity, direction, discipline, development, which of those have you seen be the hardest to get a leader to live into or to adapt?
Yeah.
First of
Well,
all,
oh,
hold on one second.
oh,
First of
gotcha.
all, the if you don't have discipline, you need somebody to help you get discipline. Felt a little targeted, Hannah. Just kidding. Just
Hey,
kidding.
listen, at least you got the yin and the yang right there.
Yeah,
You can
yeah,
at least
I
admit
mean,
it.
for myself too,
I
I'm gonna shout out to our team as well. Like, Loli, we love you.
yeah, exactly. I'm just teasing. All right, sorry,
Yeah.
Brian, jump in.
No, no, it's great. I mean, I think that's the reality of any company is that if you are vulnerable enough as a leader to recognize like, hey, that isn't a strength of mine or whatever way you may think about it, it is a strength of whoever, this person in the company or a consultant or somebody outside that's helping you guys out. I too believe in our clients, what we see on a regular basis. We think of capacity mostly surrounding the individual, in this case, founders who we work with the most and we think of performance around, what is the actual strategic go-to-market motions and strategy and the nuances of the plan you're going to try to implement, and then the systems we need to make sure that you're using to help you implement, and obviously the practices that keep that thing moving.
Mhm.
So I guess I'd answer your question with the fact that discipline is probably where it starts, but I don't know if it's that the founder's saying I either am or am not disciplined. What we tend to lean on is if the project needs to get done or if the work needs to change in the company, who is it that does it the best?
Mm. Hmm.
And sometimes the founder will be like, I love getting into the weeds and doing the work. And some will be, I think the terms, they're more visionary and they don't really get into the execution as much.
Hmm.
I was talking to a client earlier today, and that has been his anchor for 20 years. So there's a 20-year financial advisory firm and in this and very successful. So it's not like you don't get to 20 years without having what they call assets under management and a great portfolio of clients.
Yeah.
But he's trying to really break through. And our work with him is really to kind of get him to recognize that, hey, your superpowers aren't in building the systems and processes. It's just not your thing. You are a person that attracts great clients and gets people kind of excited about where you're headed. And so, we've really had to go through a couple tough moments for him to see that. As much as you want to put in front of their feet the answer, it's hard to, see them pull it through until they're ready to do it. But we're making progress, and I think that's the key.
Yeah, I'll actually call out what you just said too to anyone who is listening and thinking about working with Brian's team or our team. Like, you got to make sure you're ready because we're ready. And I do think that it creates such a lovely environment when you meet a client who's just like, oh, yes, please, let's do it. Let's dive in. It's so good. Well, Dave, did you have any other questions, or I was going to kind of offer it to Brian to say, Brian, how can people get in touch with you if they want to take that growth readiness score assessment, if they want to reach out directly? Yeah, how would they get in touch with you?
Yes. First of all, thank you again for the opportunity, to sit down with you guys. It's been great. And if there's more we can do to help you both continue to be successful and help your clients, let us know. But yeah, our website obviously is the easiest place to start, optitude.co. And then you'll see once you get to the website in the upper right-hand corner, there's a gold box that says, "Are you growth ready?" question mark. Click on that. It'll take you to a type form and you'll get your results in, 5 minutes. So that's the growth readiness score. I'm obviously on social media on LinkedIn. If you include my name and the title of the podcast, you guys just Google that and I'll come up. DM me. I'd love to connect with you. And more importantly, just big fan of what you guys are doing. So congrats on all your success and the work you guys are doing with your clients.
Yeah, likewise.
Thanks.
So cool. All the things you just mentioned, we'll make sure they go in the show notes as well. If you want the visual, check it out on YouTube. We post all these on YouTube. So check us out over there at Business Velocity. Thanks so much, Brian. I appreciate we'll wrap up where we talk about you and you're not here. So I'll prelude that a little bit so you know what we're saying.
That sounds
Uh,
good.
but I always appreciate the humility in which you present yourself, the energy you have towards clients and the level of support you bring in addition to the knowledge, wisdom, experience. So the impact that you have overall, I think is really, really powerful. And I'm glad to have gotten to meet you over the last few years and have benefited from it myself. And I know many others will as well. So thanks for your time. Great to have you.
You bet. Thank you. And congrats to you guys. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, Brian. I think there's so much a synergy, obviously, between what they do at Optitude and what did we do at Evolve. So it was a very, again, synergistic conversation where it's like, yeah, you probably see this, and you probably see this, and you probably do it this way, and we do it that way. And it's nice to talk to somebody else that sees what we see and sees how we see it, and that 7 to 10 year age of the business, like those kind of trends of people who are like, yeah, I really want this second stage of growth. It's cool that, not only are we kind of like finding those people and helping them from our approach, but he's finding them and helping them from their approach. I love what he said about the like drain the lake, fill the lake thing, because it does resonate. And like I said, thought exactly of some people that we've worked with where I'm like, yeah, they struggled with that and that sucked. And then I also think he named the episode with his call to action. I like the Are you growth ready? So I
Yeah.
think that's going to be the title of the episode.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, why not? Thanks, Brian, for teeing us up with that one. Yeah, I mean, honestly, you can see why Brian and I hit it off a couple years ago and we connected. Honestly, I think we view business transformation really similarly, right? It's often leader forward. And how do we elevate leadership? How do we elevate the leader so that the business can elevate? And how do we create the systems behind that to support that elevation? It's not one or the other, but it's very much systems and behavior. And that is a core belief we have. And it came through in what Brian shared today. And I think we align very much around how to approach this business transformation. And it's why I think we both are successful in helping our clients. And he's just a good dude, good, smart guy, humble guy. I always appreciate that a lot, and really just wants to serve. So grateful again for Brian, his time. And please do check out the Growth Readiness Score. Like you said, I've taken it, Hannah took it, as we really examined our own RevOps functions. And it is quick, it's easy, it is insightful, all of the things. So there's no reason not to do it. Go check it out. Please check out this episode, and we'll be back again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. If you know someone who could benefit from this episode, send it to them and check out the rest of our episodes this season. We're really enjoying season 3 so far. And Dave, till next time.
Until next time, see you soon.
Thank you for joining us on Business Velocity. Today's insights are just the beginning of enhancing your business's momentum. Don't forget to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also explore our framework at theevolvedifference.com. And remember, the time is now to take these strategies and apply your learning and achieve velocity. See you next time.